Let's turn to some other news now. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to use cluster bombs if Ukraine does the same. It comes days after Ukraine received shipments of the controversial weapons from the United States. Cluster munitions are banned by over 100 countries worldwide because of their widespread damage and because they can leave behind many unexploded bomblets that harm civilians long after fighting has ended. The head of the United Nations has appealed for them to never be used. But Human Rights Watch claims both Russia and Ukraine have already used cluster bombs in the 17-month war. In an interview released by state television on Sunday, Putin said Moscow was ready to retaliate with its own cluster bombs.
I'd like to note that the Russian Federation has a sufficient stockpile of different types of cluster munitions. Different types. We haven't done this before. But of course, if they are used against us, we reserve the right to take reciprocal action.
Let's bring in DW's Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert for more. Konstantin, Putin has said Russia has a significant stockpile of cluster bombs. Do we know how big that stockpile might be?
Well, I think no one definitely knows it because Russia doesn't want to reveal that. But it is actually big enough to have been used before. And frankly speaking, I think Putin is quite quite truthful this time when he says that he's going to retaliate and that he has a supply of these munitions. Neither the United States nor Russia nor Ukraine have signed up to banning cluster munitions, and now they are being used in this war. I'm absolutely certain that Putin has enough of this stuff to continue using it against Ukrainians, as he already did, actually.
And do you expect we'll see an increase in their use after deliveries from the U.S. to Ukraine last week?
Yes, I think that Putin, who is, we know that he abhors being seen as weak, quote unquote, he will retaliate massively against Ukrainian use of cluster munitions. However, this is not new. This happened before on both sides of the front. So for him, it's just a continuation of what was there before. Not maybe as before that, it wasn't as massive as probably is going to become now, because it seems that Ukraine bets quite a lot on using these munitions to break through Russian defenses in its counteroffensive. But it's definitely, not big news. It's not the first time they're being used.
Yeah, tell us more about Ukraine's counteroffensive. Where do things stand at the moment? Are they making the gains that they have hoped for?
Well, look, I think that the Ukrainians definitely did not deliver yet on any kind of spectacular recapture of territory that was promised. They have managed to liberate, I think, up to maybe several dozen square kilometers, maybe a bit more now. But still, it is an ongoing process, as far as I understand. And that is what a lot of military experts are saying, and that is what was discussed here in Vilnius during the NATO summit among experts. The problem is that the Russian forces are really dug in. They managed to create quite formidable, permanent, stationary defenses. And that is why it's very difficult for Ukrainians to break through. And that is why President Zelensky wanted to use cluster munitions, although it is, well, quite a risky thing both for Ukrainians and for the future of Ukraine, as well as, of course, it's not making great PR for Ukraine. Let's also admit it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that update. That's DW's Russia analyst, Konstantin Eggert. And our correspondent, Matthias Böhringer, joins me now from Kyiv for more. Matthias, what do you make of this announcement by Putin, and what kind of reaction have you seen in Ukraine?
Both sides have used cluster bombs since the very beginning of the war, in the very early days of the war, with the vast majority of cases recorded. It's Russian troops using these ammunitions, using them indiscriminately, also against civilian settlements. It's not very hard to find evidence of this. You can go to villages near the front line or where the front line has one speen, and you will talk there to the demining teams. They frequently demine Russian bomblets from these cluster bombs, or you can talk to people there about these bomblets exploding. So these words by Putin, they're an outright lie, and this is how Ukrainians perceive it. Reactions have been very muted to that, because people do not really take what Putin says serious. What he does, yes, but what he says, not at all. However, there have been a few people posting evidence of these use of Russian cluster ammunitions against civilian settlements on social media. That's the most, that's the few reactions that have been there. Otherwise, Putin's words aren't seen as an indicator neither of what he plans to do. They're rather probably targeted, that's how Ukrainians perceive it, at a domestic and a Western audience, forcing Western media companies to report them like we do now.
So, Matthias, what do you think the delivery of cluster munitions from the United States to Ukraine, and then also this statement now by Vladimir Putin, what will they mean for the future development of the war?
Well, the Ukrainian hope is that they will achieve some kind of parity, that it will allow them to be more efficient against Russian positions. Ukraine has vowed to use them only against military positions. Anything else would be war crime, and their hope is that this would kind of allow them to basically kill more Russian soldiers on the front line and be able to advance, break through their positions more quickly. Whether this will happen or not, we don't know. I doubt that it will be, that will change the picture in a very significant way.
Well, thank you very much for your reporting. That's DW's correspondent Matthias Böhringer in Kyiv.